Nice.
All right, well, welcome. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, humanists, free thinkers, rights, whatever you like to call yourself, you're welcome. And the reason that we call ourselves atheists is because here you'll never hear anything supernatural preached from the podium, as it were. So anyway, welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about happiness and about goodwill, well-being, which are related topics, but they're a little bit different. And so positive atheism. Atheism is at its most basic a lack of belief in gods. And that's why we say all babies are atheists. But someone who doesn't believe in gods is said to have negative atheism. And a belief that there are no gods is something different. So that's called positive atheism. So it's kind of funny that babies are negative atheists. And someone like George Carlin, who's pretty sure that there isn't a God, is a positive atheist. So what I'm doing is I'm doing a lot of thinking about positive atheism. And if I am pretty sure that God doesn't exist, what does it mean for how I best live my life? So this week's talk is on happiness partly, and then in the end we're going to conclude by talking a little bit about well-being. So amplifying whatever happiness and pleasure we already have in our lives. And then we'll talk about the definition of well-being, which is used by Sam Harris in his book, The Moral Landscape. Well-being is a more inclusive term because it's possible to feel unhappy and still have well-being, because it's okay to be unhappy sometimes. And especially when something happens that's sad, or when we need to get dissatisfied about something in life so that we can focus on changing it. So let's just start off talking just about happiness. So I started this week kind of focusing on all the things that make me happy. And if you will do this, you'll find that within just a few hours, or at most a few days, you'll actually see your happiness increase. And I just want to add that if for any reason somebody, like, this is being seen on YouTube, if somebody is watching a talk on happiness and they do these things and they don't find their happiness increasing, then that is a sign that something might be wrong and you should seek some support for yourself. So there's a website called 1,000 Awesome Things by a guy named Neil Pasricha, and he also has a TED Talk. And I'll give the link to his talk on YouTube. But I take some of my happy things, pleasures, from his website, 1,000 Awesome Things. And I just want to point out how simple they really are. So awesome is not about luxury. It's about a pack of sharpened number 2 pencils. And once you start thinking about what's awesome, you're going to start finding it everywhere. And that's really the point. There's toilet paper on the roll, and there are backups in the cabinet. Awesome! And there's also this really funny talk by Jill Sharga on TED Talk, which is about how overworked the word awesome has become. She wants to put the awe back in awesome. So when we had our talk on the nature of wonder, we were talking about the Ice Age, for example. That's something that's really awesome. So I'm going to dial back on the use of the word awesome and just call these things that make me happy. But I wanted to show you, dude, this is awesome, okay? A dog, and that's one dog wearing a Halloween costume. I thought it was super awesome. So this is really kind of a list of little pleasures, and they're not ones that actually require great discernment to select. And in fact, studies have shown that when people have more choices, sometimes their satisfaction with their choices overall decreases. They have a fear of making the wrong choice or having made the wrong choice. So if you have to choose between Top Hot Donuts and Voodoo Donuts, and you have to choose between the maple bacon bar, the raspberry donut, and the apple spice donut, for example, you might feel like, anxiety about choosing the wrong thing. So please don't get too fancy and don't go out looking for ways to treat yourself. The point here is to focus on just being mindful in the moment and noticing the simple pleasures that life already offers. This being Seattle, I'm sure everyone in the room already knows the right answer. Top pot, of course. And you can't go wrong with any of them. So I came up with 5 categories of things that you can be happy about. And only one of them is really stuff. So focusing on these happy moments helps elevate our mood, makes us feel grateful, and it can actually make us feel more resilient and more capable of dealing with stuff as it comes up. So the first thing I recommend is to go ahead and enjoy your body. Enjoy a soft blanket on a chilly night. Savor crawling into bed at night, especially when you're tired. Enjoy a hot shower in the morning. And appreciate taking clean clothes out of the dryer. Notice how they smell. When you give someone a hug and they have really clean hair, enjoy the smell of a loved one's clean hair. Second category of pleasure is past tripping. Sometime during this week, notice if anything positive triggers a positive memory. And go ahead and expand on and amplify any positive memories you have. What was fun for you as a child, or even a couple of years ago? Do you remember going to drive-in movie theaters? Have you run through the sprinklers on a hot day? And when was the last time you went berry picking? Now, 2 of those pleasures probably belong in the past, but we can still go berry picking. So an interesting thing to note is, I'll just pause for a second. An interesting thing to note is how happy you feel in the short term and how happy you feel in the long term are not necessarily the same things. And there's actually a term for this, and I'm not sure what the term is. I think it's reflective happiness is when you're looking back on it, and then there's the happiness that you're feeling in the short term. But they did research, and actually, who participated in research like this when he was in college, where he wore a pager around, and then the researchers would every hour or 2 hours contact him and say, "How are you feeling?" And they just took a cross-section of regular students to find out how often people reported, "I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling stressed out, I'm feeling in love," whatever they said that they were feeling. And what they found out with this research is that it's possible that in the moment you can feel completely rotten, but you can look back on a period of time and report you believe that your overall experience of that time was happy. So I'm going to give a couple examples because it seems counterintuitive. For example, a student is going through breakup during finals and is about to graduate from college and uncertain about the future and having extreme unhappiness and anxiety on a moment-by-moment basis. But years later, reflecting back on this time, he might say, "I remember that I was proud of that essay I wrote. I remember walking across campus," and that he remembers it being a happy time. Another example is a small child who had to work very hard on a farm, getting up in the dark, in the freezing cold, and doing chores. But looking back on it as an adult, she reports that getting up an hour before sunlight was a sign of the family's discipline, and that sharing the work among family members and coming in for a hot breakfast are all like symbols for her of the intimacy of the family. So the grueling, dirty, exhausting work now is transformed through love and nostalgia into a Norman Rockwell memory. So I invite you to feel free, in ways that are appropriate, to reframe anything in your past in ways to maximize your happiness, or simply to focus on whatever was the happy points. Third, you can feel happy by looking at life through the eyes of a child. It's interesting to remember that when you were a child, just going through a car wash was exciting. There were things rolling over the cars and swishing around the cars. And that's a little harder, at least it's harder for me to kind of catch this kind of happiness, but slowing down and noticing what's going on around you in an appreciative way. I especially find that I can do this when I'm in nature. You know, when I see a little bird that I didn't expect to see or something like that. Fourth type, allowing empathy with other people to bring joy into your life. So you can notice that cooperating with others feels good, and also just enjoy other people's happiness vicariously. So really fast group cleanups, walking around your neighborhood and recognizing familiar faces. And if you've ever had the experience of driving around town with your dog in the front seat, pulling up at a stoplight and noticing a total stranger smiling at surprise at seeing the dog and enjoying those two beings enjoying each other. Now, stuff sometimes does make us happy. Homemade, salty, sweet chocolate chip cookies, beefy, cheesy poutine, and no surprise, there are actually a lot of recipes for vegan poutine online. Those use mushroom gravy. And I was thinking, well, that might be good. That might be good too. I wouldn't kick a vegan poutine out of the kitchen without trying it. Now, most of us here in Seattle probably prefer our thick pullover with a hood and a kangaroo pouch to almost anything else in our closet, except the stuff made of fleece. And this is where mindfulness really comes in again. You know, it's hard to make this list because it's kind of like this is kind of my list. But you know, so the question is, what's your list of things that give you pleasure? But I would recommend that as far as stuff goes, some stuff is useful, some stuff is sentimental, and anything that isn't useful or really loved, go ahead and give it away and let someone else benefit from it. Because then you can enjoy your stuff by giving it away. So if you actively practice the mindset of appreciation, gratitude, positive reflection, connection, and generosity, you will feel happier, most likely. It might take a few days before you notice that you're getting in a happy groove. But if you consistently focus on happy things, and then this is where I say again, if you don't feel happier, then that's. But from this happy place is where I want to talk about well-being. So I'm taking the term well-being from Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape. And well-being is different from happy, because it's okay to be unhappy sometimes, and there are times when that's appropriate. But well-being is a more inclusive state, and it includes health, financial stability, creativity, education, inclusion, opportunity, participation in the culture, and lots of other things. So I want you to understand what well-being is. I want you to imagine for a moment the worst life that you can imagine. Okay, someone who is really suffering the worst life. And I'm going to paraphrase from his description in the book. Now, I'm paraphrasing partly because there are kids present. So imagine living in a third world country beset by civil war. You are an illiterate woman whose husband has disappeared and your home was completely destroyed. You have witnessed cruelty, violence, and victimization of others by drug-crazed soldiers. At this moment, you are hiding and fearing for your life. So there's someone somewhere having that experience right now. Now I want you to pause for a moment and think about what you would consider the best possible life that you can imagine. Here's his description, more or less paraphrased. Imagine that you are a respected professional in a wealthy country, and you have a loving, intelligent, and charismatic partner Your employment is intellectually stimulating and pays you very well. For decades, you have enjoyed immense personal satisfaction from meaningful work, which makes a difference in your world. You, your family, and your friends will live long, prosperous lives, virtually untouched by crime or other major misfortune. So it's possible to imagine that someone on the spectrum is having that experience right now. And so obviously we would all choose life B, right? That's the goal. If you chose life B, then you understand the idea of well-being and why it is a good thing. And in the book, The Moral Landscape, he goes on for a whole chapter about the fact that there are philosophers who question him on, is life B really better than life A? But you have to just kind of go with that premise, okay? That we want to have a well-being means safety. It means all of these different things, also opportunity to be creative, intellectually stimulated, all of that. So this past week, I was speaking on the phone with a minister that I know, and she asked me, don't I believe that the way that we all know what is good and what is right is because of the divine spark within ourselves? And the answer for me is, well, no. I don't believe that having a desire to live life B is owing to my divine spark. We all have a concept of good, unless you're a psychopath. And adding a supernatural source to your desire for living a good life doesn't really add anything for me, But Sam Harris, he wants to do away with the belief that our morals come from God. And without going off track here, because most of us are familiar with Sam Harris and his work, we know his concerns. And his concern is, of course, when that religion can make good people do bad things, basically. But many things are done in the name of God. And I would like to add, just personally, in all fairness, that I believe, and I know, that an awe-inspiring amount of charity and good work is also done in the name of people's religious beliefs, as well as the acts of terrorism and things that Mr. Harris is concerned about. But he's looking for something other than religious belief to guide us in knowing if an action is moral. And because using faith as the guide is very dangerous. And I do agree with the fact that it's a good idea to have something other than religion to make the decision. So he asks the question, does it lead to the well-being of conscious beings? And whatever leads to more well-being for conscious beings makes sense. And I think that's something that I can get behind. So we can get into the difficulties, and of course he devotes, lots of ink to how much different things might contribute to well-being, and that it's, it's not a simple calculus. But the overall premise that this would be a value to us is something important, right? That we're living lives to improve the well-being of other beings, not to please God, for example. Now he asks the question, he says, what if we cease to worry about right and wrong or good and evil, and simply ask to maximize the well-being of others? And would we lose anything important in our culture? And the argument is no. In fact, we'd have like a much more civilized world. So interestingly enough, this past week I also read Jimmy Carter's book, A Call to Action, Women, Religion, Violence, and Power this week. And so Jimmy Carter, of course, is very different than Sam Harris. He's religious. But it was just a beautiful book about the things that the Carter Center for Peace are doing around the world. And in some ways, to say that these two men are very different would not be the whole story, because they're both humanists. And though Carter is doing what he's doing in Jesus' name, the Carter Center for Peace works with organizations all around the world to promote the well-being of people. And they do use readings from relevant religious traditions. So they use the Quran when they're in the Middle East. Well, really what they do is they work with the local people and let the local people do the work for themselves. So they don't If you're a Muslim, then your book would be the Quran. And they also use secular documents like the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights to establish moral guidelines. So the book covers some really unfortunate and sad things and some truly evil things, particularly that are happening against women in places like Congo. So I read the book and you almost feel helpless, but then you realize that there are NGOs working for peace and justice and making a difference in this part of the world. So to conclude, I couldn't help but think, what if people took all the creativity and resourcefulness and knowledge at our disposal, and we got to work solving these problems: injustice, poverty, disease, and war, to name a few? What would it look like? What's stopping us? And I don't think it's apathy, but I think it can be a lack of knowledge about both the problems as well as the solutions. And there's a fear, I think, for some people, myself included, that the problems are so big and so entrenched that it might be like hopeless that we can make a difference. So here are my suggestions. It's okay and even necessary to think about our own moments of happiness, because it helps us to realize how fortunate we are, and it builds up a positive mental state which can help us extend ourselves towards those who are more fortunate than ourselves. And it is important to educate ourselves about secular organizations that promote peace and understand what work is being done around the world to increase well-being and find ways to help those efforts. And in this way, we can all have more happiness and well-being. So my standard ending is, atheists believe in good because good works in non-mysterious ways. Thank you.